Hey, everybody. Welcome to this Lunch and Learn today. It is great to have you with us. Thanks for being a part of this. It's going to be a wonderful time. I'm really looking forward to it. We've got Jefferson Bethke joining us today, and I'm thankful for Jeff. He's been a friend for a long time, gifted communicator, real entrepreneur, constantly reinventing. So I'm looking forward to hearing from him. Because as a C3 leaders, and we work with a lot of leaders in Western Washington, I want to invite in a guest first who's going to tell us a little bit about her C3 experience. And it's interesting because she's not yet in a C3 forum, which is the best thing we do. And she's not in one, but we're going to get her there soon enough. It's Lisa McIntyre. Lisa, hi there. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Can we hear you okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Awesome. So I thought you could just spend a couple minutes telling us about C3 and your involvement, what it's meant for you, and yeah, tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I have several good friends. Good morning or good afternoon, by the way. I have several good friends that are part of C3, and they had recommended it to me previously. And my church used to have a really large marketplace ministries that I was really heavily involved with, and so then after that stopped, I was searching for something to fill the gap and to meet more friends and colleagues. And so I decided to call Mason. And so he's made me feel very welcome. And I've enjoyed the different things I've been involved with, the Martin Luther King breakfast and just a meet and greet. But then this series, I was really impressed with how Mason quickly jumped onto the wagon on offering these presentations. He actually was the first one that I came across and was really thrilled to be part of it and been so encouraging. He beat out two other colleagues of mine that have started up like leadership inspirational meetings once a week. And so I'm really impressed how quickly he put it together, and it's been really inspiring. So.
That's great. Thank you, Lisa, and thanks for sharing. I really appreciate it. It's been great to get to know you, and thank you for what you're doing in the business community too. Lisa owns a super cool company. Tell us just a second about your company, because it's neat what you guys are doing.
Sure, thank you. Well, previously we used to be a full architecture firm, and now we've moved into our company name is called Home Free, and we're a luxury tiny home manufacturing and development company. And our first village is going to be here in Seattle, and our second one down in California. And then after that, shoot the works and across the nation. So
that's great. Thank you for what you're doing. Thanks for leading, and know that we're praying for you business leaders and trying to support you as much as possible in this unique season. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, I want to give you a little bit of understanding of what our time's going to be like today and the expectations. Life is going hard. It's coming at you fast. And there are just these small windows where we could slow down and take some time to think about who we are, what we're doing, how we integrate our faith in the workplace. And God has you here for this time. So I hope that you can silence your devices. Movies theaters can't tell you to do that anymore because there's no movie. So I'll tell you, silence your devices, focus. This is the only screen you should have on. Don't be trying to do email in the background. The only thing that Jefferson will allow you to do is maybe read his book while you're watching the podcast or watch this cast, but that's it. We have the opportunity today to have Jefferson Bethke with us. At the end, we will have question and answer times, and there's a chat box in which you can ask your questions. Know that if you ask your questions, they may pop up here with your name and your Facebook profile pic. So keep it clean, people. Jefferson, I'm glad you could be with us. Thank you very much. It's great to see you, brother. How you doing?
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is super fun. I was just reminiscing, even when you were just talking a second ago, of that first time I think we met, 2012. The Western Washington leaders thing out. Was it like Ocean Shores or something? Was that where
we've gone from Ocean Shores to Oahu? Not bad, buddy.
I know Hawaii is a little bit better water, even though it's the same ocean. A little bit better water than the Washington Pacific Ocean.
How are you guys holding up? How are the kids? You've got two boys and a little girl, right?
Close, yeah. So we got a 6-year-old girl, 4-year-old boy, 1.5-year-old girl. So we're doing good. Enjoying it. I mean, it wasn't as big of an adjustment for us because, I mean, we homeschool. I work from home. I'm already super kind of like creative, introverted. So I just basically stay at home anyways and don't go out unless I need to. So it actually feels weird because that hasn't adjusted at all. But of course, with the psychological adjustment has been huge of just knowing what's happening in the world, what we're going through, what our friends are going through. Certainly, so we live on Maui. Maui's getting hit really hard. I think there was even a study that came out in USA Today that it's probably the second most concentrated place of like being affected economically by the virus, behind Midland. If you saw the oil prices going into the negative, so very similar in that regard. Just because tourism is so obviously dependent here, and then for that to go away,
right? Just this morning, Brenda was telling me that our county, Snohomish County, where we live, had the largest drop in health insurance for people. We were at 7%. Wow. It's now at 14%, largest in the state. So we're all having these little pockets of impact. How are you and Alyssa doing? You guys holding up?
So we're doing good. We almost, and this is really like, it's such a fascinating, like I love case studies, I love sociology and all that stuff. It's fascinating to see who's being affected by what, who's getting busier, who's getting less busy, who, like what industries are getting impacted, what aren't. And us is the opposite. Like a lot of people are out of work right now. Us, it's actually a really busy season where we're having to put what we even talk about into practice because, and I think I'm guessing, having talked to a lot of my pastor friends and stuff, even though I'm not a pastor, ministry work is similar right now where we're kind of like all hands on deck to serve people. And so it's besides that doing really well, but it is an interesting thing to have this moment happen and then actually have, because we run an initiative called familyteams.com is one of the things we do. And the family stuff is just going through the roof. People just want family resources and tips and tools. So that's an interesting problem and challenge for sure.
Well, so you mentioned that about reinventing yourself and the different things you're doing. And I've been able to watch you from afar across an ocean and with your traveling. And you really have been excellent at reinventing yourself, doing new things. You have a very entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
That's a gift. And it's going to be a gift for our business leaders today. This broadcast will be going out to business leaders and marketplace influencers, primarily in Washington State, but because we're on Facebook and YouTube, it will go around the US. So I want to, as we talk about to hell with the hustle, we're going to have to be okay with saying hell. Okay. We're good at that. I know we're kind of Christian. No, that might.
Yeah. I joked that we almost had a special Christian edition book called To Heck with the Hustle.
We're not going to name who that was for.
Yeah.
So as you tell us about yourself, what you're doing. I mean, your portfolio of work that you've done and that you're doing is significant. And then I'll start diving into some questions about To Hell with the Hustle. But first, tell us about yourself and what you're doing.
Yeah, kind of like you mentioned. I mean, you can call it serial entrepreneur. I would even say more like serial solopreneur because I think there's actually people that are a little bit more about business scale than I am. I'm a little bit more individual with it. But yes, always reinventing, reassessing, figuring it out. Because trying to make a living on the internet is very similar to, I always think of the Valley of Dry Bones, where it's like, you get a viral video or you have something spike, and then to try to actually monetize or create something that's sustainable off of that is enormously difficult. And thankfully, I don't think because of me, but because of people that we surrounded ourselves with 7-8 years ago when that stuff started to happen and viral videos and all that, then we've created really, now looking back, it's like, man, it's crazy sustain. Even in this moment, it's been a cool kind of, encouragement in this moment where I've actually, some stuff has dropped, of course, events got canceled, stuff like that. So we kind of looked at each other like, we're fine because we diversified and had built different assets and different streams and different things so that one could just totally drop off and it'd be okay. And so all to say, to give the big broad overview for those listening real quick. So it started as me creating YouTube videos that would just teach and encourage people about Jesus. Then it kind of has since then transformed to deploying any available ability on the internet to market and sell and serve people mainly. Like we want to create stuff that still does that same thing, makes people think, gives them encouragement, and builds them up, either their family, their personal spiritual growth, in their relationships. We do a lot of like engagement, dating stuff, or I used to do more of it. So then, so that can be a podcast, that can be multiple books we've written, that can be e-courses. We do multiple live events with our family teams thing. We have a membership platform. We do a mastermind. Like you can just go on and on and on. It's hilarious to actually start talking about the list. But that's what we do now. And we love it. We absolutely love it. We get to talk about and do what we love. And there's nothing better than talking about and doing what you love while also knowing that people are being genuinely served and encouraged, and still trying to grow and get better at it. But it's fun.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, thank you for doing that. It's fun to watch your creative energy.
It's fun. I enjoy doing it.
Yeah. When I told somebody you were going to be with us and that the title of the seminar was To Hell with the Hustle, their response was, well, that doesn't apply to today.
Yeah.
Nobody's hustling. There's nothing to hustle. There's nothing to hustle about. There's nothing to hustle to. And I was like, yeah, you got to read these chapter titles. You got to read this book. I mean, this is almost a prophetic gift to us. So
yeah, it's weird. It is. I will say it's surreal to write a book that is more pertinent 6 months after you wrote it than before. Like, yeah, and we're seeing that even with like people buying it and people engaging with it. Like, it is surreal to write a book back I wrote the book 2 years ago, came out last October, and then for this moment to see it kind of like momentum catch. It's weird, but it is cool. It's cool to see that the stuff that we were. It's just funny how God always sees what you can't see, and stuff that we were trying to work through and practice and observe and cultivate in our own lives was good even in the world we were in, but I think those are highly necessary even now. And so to answer that person's question, I think it's a fair assessment, actually fair thing, but I would push back on two things. One, I would say, yes, at some level, you're right. Like, we're not hustling that much because we're all like shut down. And that's a moment of repentance. Like, if you don't repent, it will happen again. You know what I mean? Like, it'll happen again and again and again. You see that, one of the weirdest verses in all of Scripture that no one talks about is at the end of 2 Chronicles, last chapter, last paragraph. 2 Chronicles, chronologically speaking, is the last book of the Old Testament, meaning it was the last thing written, kind of like what's the last stamp before we go into the, the period of silence in the New Testament. And it literally says, the last thing it says is it's the chronicler, who I believe was Ezra, is looking back on kind of Israel's exile, telling that story, and he kind of puts a little interpretation on it. And he says that the 70 years of exile were set up because the land needed to rest for 70 perpetual Sabbath years. Now, if you don't know, the Old Testament Torah law was that every 7 years, the land needed to get a break, chill, rest, kind of like, and debts free on the Jubilee every 49 years, some other things like basically like everything needs to lie follow. You need to trust God. You need to serve each other and come together communally. Now, if you know the story of Israel, they didn't do that. They didn't honor that law. And we don't know the exact time when that law was given. Obviously, with Moses, we know the period. And we don't know exactly when the exile ended. We know the close period. But the range there is over 400 plus years, which if you do the math, every 7 years, that means they missed out on about 70 Sabbath years. They disobeyed 70 Sabbath years worth of time. So it's fascinating that that's actually the interpretation Ezra puts on the entire exile, that actually, no, God actually pulled you out of the land because of your own sin, sure, but also because just the land needed to rest. And if you're not going to let it rest, I'm going to force you to let it rest. And I think I think that spirit is in today a little bit, you know what I mean? Of like, man, I think God's saying like the West, the Industrial Revolution, these things that have been going for hundreds of years, I think this is at some level a moment of just like reflection of, man, maybe there's a little bit of that there. Maybe there's a little bit of God just saying, I want to give the land some rest. I want to give your heart some rest. I want to give your family some rest. I want your heart to return home. I want you to come home. So when there isn't hustling, we have to actually let that moment teach us, or else we'll just repeat it. And then secondly, what I would answer with that is actually, I think we still are hustling, because hustling and hurry is a state of the heart, not, and the performance is just an outflow of that. So sure, if you're not working 80 hours a week, maybe it doesn't look like you're hustling, but the heart that made you hustle 80 hours a week is still in you if you haven't repented and followed Jesus in the slowness and the pace and the cadence that he gives you. So you come home and you're busied and hurried rather than actually connecting with your spouse, connecting with your kids. You may be doing a bunch of projects around the house or busying yourself because you don't want to be quiet. You don't want to be silent. You don't want to sit in what that means, like I talk about in the book. And so I think both of those are true, and that's pretty heavy.
Have you been talking to Brenda maybe? It looks like you're reading my mail.
Right. I mean, I will say there is a fun part.
Easy, brother. I mean, you said the word of pastor, you started to preach on me.
I know. Sorry. I do like to. Internet.
No, I like
it.
I guess. Well, let me ask you about that more. I mean, I want to know about, and one of the chapters in the book is about silence and solitude, or one of the questions you get after. And what have you found as the importance of embracing silence and solitude in your own life? I mean, how have you done that well, do you feel like?
Well, I think it's a practice, first of all. And I think it's really helpful because it's the one of the only tools that allows you to center yourself in a really deep anchored way. Now, that word center yourself has sadly been hijacked by a lot of, more Eastern perspectives and stuff like that. And and all that. But I think what we need to realize is the biblical vision of centering ourselves is not centering to ourselves, right? But actually centering ourselves so that we can see the face of Jesus and connect with him. That's what I mean by that. And a lot of us, we don't create space for that. We really, really like, I use this analogy of like, there's this theologian, Koisuke Koyama, who kind of uses this metaphor of God walking at 3 miles per hour, that the speed of love is 3 miles per hour. Because when you walk at 3 miles per hour, that's like this slow, non-anxious walk. And a lot of us, we're walking at 10 miles per hour, 20 miles per hour in our heart. And I use this analogy of a lot of us say that we walk with Jesus or we walk with God, but in reality, we don't. We walk ahead of him. We walk past him. We walk the opposite direction of him. And it's like, man, he walks at 3 miles per hour. So the only way you can be in relationship with him is if you're at the exact same speed, or else you're walking ahead of him. And silence and solitude is one of those moments it's every day kind of brings you into that moment, into that cadence, and reminds you to center yourself there, anchor yourself in there. Because if you're not anchored, you'll just drift, right? And so many of us drift, getting dictated by the winds. But if you're anchored, even if a wind comes, you'll stay steady. So I think that's a really big one. One other thing, too, I'll say is I think we overly romanticize silence and solitude in spiritual realms, in spiritual traditions, when in reality, and I talk about this in the book, Henry Nouwen talks about, no, silence is actually like a brutal monster. Like there's kind of this hump structure to silence and solitude where a lot of us think it's going to be awesome and amazing, and we spend 30 seconds in it, and then all of a sudden, like, our worst shame and guilt comes on us, and that's why we don't spend time in silence and solitude, because we know when we've tried it, it just actually is terrifying. It's the opposite of like feel good. And he talks about like it's where the self goes to die, is what he says. But you have to go die. Like you can't, until you die, you can't resurrect into a new life with a new pace. And so you're not going there alone. You're going there to meet Jesus, but you have to also understand the reality of it, to expect that. And that's what it'll look like.
That's good. If you were preaching, I'd be saying that's good. Amen. And I want to make sure Jefferson's coming back with us, but I want to make sure if you have any questions, you can put them down in the private chat box, and we will answer those at the end of this time. And if you're enjoying this conversation, we're going to be together for about another half hour, 40 minutes. So feel free to share it on social media with your friends. We'd love to have them join in with us. It's funny when you talked about creating space, well, first you moved to Hawaii, which is a great way to create some space. You got a whole ocean.
Yes.
And the pace of life is good, especially on Maui.
Yes.
But it's more than that. I've noticed that you make time for your kids. How have you gone about creating proactively? How have you and Alyssa gone about setting boundaries in your life proactively?
Well, I talk about this in the book where you kind of have to get in. So like God is a creature. God is a God of rhythm, and we are creatures of rhythm. So I use this metaphor in the book of like dancing, of like humans are meant to dance, right? Dance takes rhythm. There's a beat to it. There's a cadence to it that is external. You don't get to make up the music, right? When you are called to dance, you can make up your dance moves, but you have to dance within the music, right? Within the structure of the beats. And because we're so post-enlightenment and westernized, we inherently have kicked that off for like 200, 300 years, because we basically feel like anything that limits us is not freedom, right? And that's actually, I think, the heart of true liberalism, by the way, classical liberalism, not like the political liberalism we talk about, is that, man, if anything puts any limits on me, then it must be bad. But living within rhythm is not bad, right? Just ask any farmer, right? A farmer lives within the limits, lives within these structures of day and night and seasons and when to water, when to harvest, when to plant, that then brings deeply, deeply rich and beautiful soil and fruit. So then for us, and then C.S. Lewis uses this analogy even farther. We're saying like, so you need to learn how to dance, but he says, but it takes a while to learn how to dance. And when you're learning how to dance, you look down at your feet. So what he's saying is like, it's not beautiful and awesome for like years. You have to look down at your feet and practice the steps. And so I think, there's so much there, but what I would say is really quick starters would be what me and Alyssa could try. We tried to solve one problem on these three structures when we first started kind of living in this like years ago. And that's, we wanted to find a daily rhythm, a weekly rhythm, and a yearly rhythm. Now we have a bunch of each of those, but I think if you can just try for a year to practice one daily rhythm, one weekly rhythm, one yearly rhythm, I think that can be really helpful. Something that like, and you ask yourself, okay, work backwards. What do I want? I want to be a non-anxious presence. I want to be not hurried. I want to remind myself of the Lord. So for our daily one, it's super easy, but it's this 30-second prayer we say with the kids where we put our hands up as an act of receiving. And every morning at breakfast, we say, I'm not what I do. I'm not what I have. I'm not what other people say about me. I'm the beloved of God. It's who I am. No one can take it from me. I don't have to worry. I don't have to hurry. I can trust my friend Jesus and share his love with the world. So 20 seconds, right? but there is something that happens when you like put that stake in the ground every day, right? Weekly, I'd probably say Sabbath. Yearly, I'd probably say Summit or some type of getaway where we reflect and vision out our marriage and family. So I would say start there. I would say start in some type of place of like, because here's the truth that a lot of people don't realize with the dancing thing. You already are dancing. You're just dancing to culture's music, right? The way you pick up your phone is deeply, deeply, deeply rhythmic, right? It's almost at the same time every single day. You probably sleep with it next to your bed. It's probably the first thing you look at. It's deeply rhythmic. The question is, you just have to replace all those rhythms with ones that actually are pushing you into what you want to become, not the person you don't want to become, which a lot of our rhythms are doing.
Right. That was good, but I got a Facebook notification here. Well, give me a second.
Right. I know there's buzzing and notifications. I know, totally.
It gets you.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing is, Jefferson, as you talk about this, is it gets you with the stuff that I want. I mean, It's not getting me. I joke, because people say, "Oh, turn off your tracking." I'm like, I want the phone to make my life easier.
Totally.
But it does feed me what I want to hear.
Yeah, and that's what, and even like to Merrick's question he asked, which we can even answer more of this later. But he said, what are the most practical ways you have forced yourself to fight the hurry? We can answer that more robustly later, but specifically with the phone, I think you have to, and I love how he said you do have to force yourself. Like it will not come naturally. It won't come like, in a really, oh, this feels good to do this. You have to force yourself to put yourself in a position where your eyes, your attention, and your affection are facing the right things. One really good book, I think it's actually one of the best spiritual formation books of all time, and it's by a non-Christian, not about spiritual formation. It's called Atomic Habits. But that book is like an absolute spiritual formation Trojan horse book, where he doesn't know he's writing a spiritual formation book, but that book is that. And it talks about everything from shaping your space, right? Like if all the couches are facing a TV versus a TV that has to be pulled out of the room when you want to watch a movie, you will watch TV like way less, right? Because you've created friction and you've shaped your attention, your eyes, and your affection towards certain things. Same with the phone. So create rules for your phone that are really easy to keep, right? So it's hard to make rules of like, oh, don't click on that once you're on it. So we have rules of like, the phone has to stay my phone never comes in the bedroom. The phone has to stay in the office in the morning at night. It can't be the last thing I look at, and it can't be the first thing I look at in the morning. I turn it off because that's actually enough friction where when I wake up, turning it on takes too long. So that then I just move on to go read or go think. I can go on and on, but I think I love how he said that you have to force yourself into some of these. It's basically about pointing yourself, right? So we point ourselves to the wrong things. We have to point yourself to the right things, because whatever you point yourself to, you become that. That's literally how human formation works, is whatever you point yourself towards over 5 years, 10 years is just who you become.
Right. It reminds me of Acts 20, where Paul says, where he's going to Jerusalem, and he says, I'm compelled by the Spirit. And he doesn't even know what's going to happen there, but he just knows I'm supposed to take that step. Yes. And there are so many times when I'm compelled by the Spirit to do something. Yeah. I mean, I know that I know that I know. Yep. And I don't do it. Yeah. I blow right by it. And I've got to learn. Yeah,
and if you blow right by it, it just buries. It's like you have that one split second to kind of, and it's so easy to say yes in the split second, and it gets harder and harder the more you get away from it.
My number one mission in this calling with business leaders today is we're not going to let this crisis go to waste.
Yeah, totally.
God has something for us to learn. And what you just mentioned there is God doesn't give up on lessons. He doesn't go, oh, well, they didn't get it. I guess I'll have to find another. He wants us, whatever we're supposed to learn, he wants us to learn.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this is a big question. You're an elder millennial, right? Is that right?
Yeah. I'm like right in the middle, I think, but yeah.
That's great. I'm in the middle between the Gen Xers and the Boomers. So it's a great place to be.
Yes.
But you're described as a YouTuber.
Yes.
Do you like that title or not?
I do because I like that title because in general, this is insider baseball here, but that term tends to be used by people who do know what they're talking about. Meaning like YouTuber in the YouTube community means like you've made it, you have a prominent channel, people watch you, follow you, subscribe to you. If you're just someone who uploads videos, then that's like you're just kind of some peon. You know?
Yeah.
So now what's funny is that phrase doesn't tend to mean that. That's why I said insider baseball. Outside of world, people think that feels less, right? Which I totally understand that too. Again, being in the different ages and demographics. But yeah, like to be a YouTuber, I like that term and I take it.
So most of the people that I'm working with are boomers Gen Xers, a few millennials. We do some intergenerational ministry that's awesome, where the millennials and boomers meet together, and it's not so the boomers are just blessing the millennials. It's co-blessing back and forth. But most of our presenters are going to have hair that's even grayer than mine. They're going to be, and it's not. So we want to hear from a millennial about how you're thinking, because the people that we work with, our employees, the leaders that we're trying to develop are your peers. So how are you processing this current crisis, and how can we help our people?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's so many ways to go there.
Outside the book, but
no, I love it. No, I mean, I think it's within it too, but I think you can make everything fit into talking about hustle and hurry and the pace of Jesus, True. But I think one thing I think of from a generational perspective is I think this is true across the board, but I think it's really highlighting because whenever a crisis happens, things get revealed, right? And so I feel like, like with our family stuff, family teams, we've been talking about how most, like our big shtick is we talk about we're trying to take people out of the westernized, individualized family experiment into a multi-generational family team on mission. I know it's a mouthful, but that's what we say. And we're saying right now, we think the crisis reveals kind of which one you were. You know what I mean? Like if your home is chaos, then that probably shows you were in the Western individualized version of family. Where it's basically Lord of the Flies and Hunger Games, right? But then if you're on the family team side of things, when a crisis happens with a team actually gets brought closer together. And so I think that language or that structure is similar to even like with the millennials and stuff like that. And what I think it's showing is it's really revealing how strong or weak our social structure was in like actual real flesh and blood human connection beyond the screens, And I think what it's revealing is that most of us were pretty weak. And what I mean by that is I think it's revealing a severe spike in loneliness. And I'm seeing that even with friends of just not having, and of course this isn't normal. So we'll go back to a time when this isn't true, but even when you're isolated, you should at least have a communicative structure to hopefully have rich, deep, meaningful relationships. And I think what this revealed to a lot of my peers and friends that I've been talking to is how like we didn't, we didn't have that. It was more just like kind of a more flimsier, more surfacey, and just kind of people you would see and hang out with time to time. But there wasn't these really deep anchoring relationships that you can kind of hold on in times like this of FaceTiming and calling and staying connected to. And I think it's really making us realize how, I think it's kind of catching up to us. I think we're realizing how, even though of course this moment won't be forever, how isolated we are even before and after this. And so that's what I would say is like, and making sure as leaders that we're meeting those needs, that we're serving those people, that we are reaching out to those people, and that our structure, especially our societal structure, does not serve in any regard human connection, does not serve communal structure. And so to try to upbuild that, I think is what I'm learning in this moment for sure.
So what I'm hearing you say is more community.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And of course we can't like totally flesh that out right now, but I think you can set building blocks right now. Do you know what I mean? So that then when things go back to normal, it's a little bit deeper, more meaningful and richer than it was before.
I want to talk about how's your mind thinking right now. I've said that the business word of 2020 is going to be pivot. When I said it, I felt like I was making this great proclamation.
Yeah.
Now it's not. It's like obvious the way it's like every other sentence.
But it's true though.
It is true. But how are you pivoting? How are you thinking about doing what because you were doing this year, you were doing Waco, Seattle, and
yep. So that was the main hit we took is we had to cancel some live events. Everything else was mostly on the internet. And so it's been doing okay. But yeah, I mean, obviously that is the name of the game right now. What I'm also noticing too is not just pivoting, but you have to pivot first. What I'm noticing is the people that are winning right now are the people that are kind of getting ahead of it to make it look like a good offer, which hopefully, I mean, it is. You're not trying to like sell them a bill of goods, but like kind of you're pivoting creatively rather than just responding in crisis. Does that make sense? I'm like, no, this is the best idea in this moment. And we're going to go for it. And we're going to tell people and we're going to communicate it. And I'm noticing the people that are winning are the people that are doing that the fastest. The people that are not trying to hold on to the old way of doing things, but actually saying like, oh, that's gone. Let's move on. How can we? And what you have to really ask, and what we're seeing some really good returns on some certain projects we're doing, is like just serve people. That's literally what it is. Just serve. We did a crazy experiment, and this is really fun to talk about because I didn't think it would go this way. We have a membership program. I think we have like over 2,000 families in it. called Homeroom, homeroomonline.com if people want to check it out. And a couple times a year, we open that for like a week where you can enroll for that week. And then it's basically every month there's a theme, and we kind of it's basically think about like a really big small group that only concentrates on family, but it's on the internet. You get content, there's curriculum, and we all kind of hang out and talk about it together. This last one we just did, so we were planning on, we do it twice a year. Our next one I think was in July. When the crisis hit, we realized families needed a lot of help. So we said, let's do a homeroom launch and let's open it early so people can get in. And on top of that, it's like $200 for the year or something like that, like $20 a month. We said, let's do pay what you can. We just feel like that's the right thing to do. So we did like 3 tiers. It was full price, half price, and zero. If you want it for zero, you can pick whichever one you can afford. And we just said, we trust you. And what was crazy is the economics on the back end, now that we're done with it, it was radically successful and from a financial perspective. And we had like hundreds of people who signed up for free. So what it showed me is, man, if you extend the arm of trust on the internet, people don't take advantage of it. Now they might if you haven't created a good enough platform and audience, but man, I think I realized is like we had created a tribe of trust and integrity, and I was blown away that it actually went well. You know what I mean? Like that actually the people that still, like it was pay what you can, which is truly pay what you can. So if you can, pay. And people did. And that blew me away. And so I think that's another thing for this moment too, is like, I think this moment on both sides, customer and business side, is a really big moment to just develop trust. So it's like, it's not about just getting the last dollar. I think what it's about is like 3 years from now, the businesses that will be most successful are the ones that gave the most, served the most, and built the most trust equity in these couple of years, I think.
Yes, I agree 100%. Did I get it right? Homeroom.com?
Homeroomonline.com. Yeah.
Oh, I got to fix that then. I'll fix that in a second. Homeroomonline.com.
Perfect.
I love, so what you said there is you got to be first.
Yep.
And so, and I've had a couple of people coach me on that. They've said, don't wait, just go in.
Totally.
Because I'm new in this job. I'm still figuring stuff out. And this is kind of giving me an excuse to go, I'm just going to go. Ron Warman, who's one of the guys on this call, is one of those people that's done that in my life, a business leader here in Issaquah. Yeah, it's a gift to have. Now here's what's interesting. And so in Washington State, golf course is open today. Parks open.
That's a big one.
Come on. And the busyness of life, this Brenda and I this morning ran into downtown Everett. There was cars parked on the street. The busyness of life is starting to pick up again. It's starting to push us again. What would you advise for us as we transition from where we are now to whatever is ahead? Because there's a lot of good stuff we picked up. How do we retain that?
I mean, I think, is set an on-ramp, not just like a cliff that goes upwards, meaning like don't just try to climb back up to normal life, but slowly steady yourself back in. And what that does is that keep your sensors active. So that if something is too intense or you did learn something in this moment, you're like, oh, that's too busy or that's too much. But if you just jump back into it, you can so quickly get back into, just kind of like cruise control. So I would say you really have to ease yourself in with that, just even like committing to things when people invite you to things again. And then 2, make sure you're centering all the future stuff on human interaction. One of the biggest products of hustle and hurry is you commodify people. Hustle and hurry basically turns people into products, right? You hustle and you hurry when that barista is not a person. That barista is just some transaction of flesh to give you a coffee. You know what I mean? And so be very mindful of that, because I think that's what we hopefully have learned that we can institute in this moment is human interaction, and going slow is where the richness is at. And the minute you hustle and hurry, you change an image bearer to a commodity, and that just does not go well for us. And it does something to our heart too. So that's what I would say.
You know, one of the things that I heard C.S. Lewis say once is that, and it's been helpful for me, again, came from a mentor, is that the ego self relates. The ego self compares, the soul self relates.
That's good.
And that's been important for me to think about. I'm not in the business of transactions. I'm in the business of transformation.
Oh, I love that.
And that's what I hear you talking about is let's because it's easy to go into Starbucks and just make it a transaction. And I will be honest, there are times if you're a bad barista, it's going to get transactional.
Totally.
But if you can do your job
and there's a functional part to that too, of like, our businesses have to operate and go. And so it's like creating moments for that. And sometimes even with the coffee, honestly, like sometimes it's just a look in the eye and a thank you. Like, we're so humans are so much more brilliant than we think with like, 90% of language is like unspoken. Like we can instantly in a flash of a second know if that was like a genuine thank you or a genuine you're welcome or like a here you go, I'm serving you with this or I'm receiving this. We know in a flash of a second. That doesn't mean like longer, you know what I mean? And so I think all of that combined helps.
Yeah. Let me see if I got this right now. Does that look good? Homeroom.online.com.
Yep.
Boom.
So yeah, that's a fun program we do. We just signed up. Yeah, like 700 families just signed up a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's open for actually a couple more days too. So,
well, I love your thinking on that. With C3 leaders, this last year before the crisis, we went to saying C3's for you. If you need help, if you're a business leader and you need Jesus-centered peers to help walk with you in life, we're here for you. Let's get you in. Don't make money the
barrier.
Barrier.
Yep.
Now, if you're blessed, I hope that you'll think about giving, just like, and I think that happens. And honestly, do you want somebody's money, whether it's for a cup of coffee or homeroom work or a small group that isn't really into it? It's like,
exactly.
Yeah. I want to get to some questions, but first I really want to talk about how the stressors in life as they build. You've given us some tools. I'd love to get one more kind of standout, and then we'll get to the questions. Just one takeaway that you'd say from the book that has been helpful for you. And by the way, Jefferson has offered, so anybody that registered for this, so at 1:00 we'll be sending out. So you got, if you're watching this later, you're not going to get it, but he sent a monograph on his book, which is the 10 ways to de-hustle your life.
Yeah, basically kind of like a 1 page each on each tip, just to really quickly, practically kind of clean up the life that feels like it kind of slows you down and brings you more presence and faithfulness.
It's good stuff. So we're going to be sending that out to people today. So here's Jessica is a great young business leader in Bellevue, and so we'll get a question from her here. What are some tips for transitioning out of a life of hustle? Seriously. So Jefferson, this is the balance, right? It's like, okay, I don't have to hustle, and I'm going to stay in bed today.
Totally. Yeah. And specifically, and I think, that, and then also these are like two cousins of the same problem of like, how do I not get lazy while doing this? And then also like Jessica's saying, how do I do this without just like, saying no to everyone and not kind of honoring my relationships and my commitments? Good question. I mean, I will say I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, if you're familiar with that, and people who are into that stuff. That means that I have no problem saying no to anyone or anything. So I'm not the best person to ask this question because I'm just like, this is the best thing for us and my family. No, I will not. We are leaving. We are done. I have no problem with that. And then Alyssa's a 9 on the Enneagram, which is the peacemaker, which is the opposite, so where she just is like, wants to, serve people and, do what they ask and stuff like that. So real quickly though, I would say, I do think that I have this whole chapter, or it's like half a chapter on the art or the lesson of saying no. We have to get really good at saying no, because you can't say yes to what God has called you to in this world at all unless you are really good at saying no. Like, think about it. Like, more than any time, like, let this sink in. In more than any time in all of human history, you are more able to be reached. You are more able to be asked things of you. You are more able to be talked to any time of the day. You can go on and on. Like, the accessibility is actually absurd. But yet our hours haven't grown. Right? The people in the 1500s had 24 hours. We have 24 hours. So the only thing that can grow is our no, right? Unless we just want to burn ourselves out and hustle and overwhelm ourselves. The only thing that can grow, because our days can't and our hours can't, is our no. So you have to just get good at it it's just pure math. That's a pure formula of just like, we live in 2020. We live in an internet connected age. Unless you say no more, it's not going to go well. Now, I think, Jessica, you're asking a little bit subtler of that question. So I think what I would say is also, like what I talked about earlier, if there's a way to do it while honoring people, right? People in relationship, it's what's most important. And there's a really weird, how do I explain this? There's a weird, complex kind of paradox that I think is only the Spirit can confirm in you, right? And I talk about this with Jesus in that chapter. Jesus was able to do two things at once. He was deeply focused on like, I am here to go to the cross, right? And so there's kind of this metaphor in all the Gospels of like, he's on his way to Jerusalem as like a metaphor of like going to Jerusalem is the mission, right? Because at Jerusalem would be the cross and the resurrection. So he's deeply focused. deeply has a mission. A lot of us, we don't have that. We're basically saying yes to everyone else's missions. We're saying yes to everyone else's vision statements. We have no mission. We have no vision. Like, what's our thing? Why are we here? What's my filter? Jesus had that. Yet, while Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem, what happened all the time? He got interrupted. In fact, if you do the math, most of his miracles and most of his healings were what I call healings or miracles of interruption, meaning he was not going to that person to do that miracle at all. Right? He was walking, someone interrupts him. Because he so humanizes people, he takes the moment, enters into it as a spirit-led moment, and then he heals the person or causes a miracle. And so I just kind of say that's a really good both and you have to hold, right? Either, because if you only hold one of those, it's not good. If you're always interrupted with no vision, your life just goes nowhere. And if you're always on a vision that you basically ignore everyone, then that's not loving and that's not full of the spirit. Right?
Yeah.
So you have to hold both of those at the same time. And so, Jessica, hopefully that is a helpful kind of thing of like, okay, can I start transitioning out and saying no to certain things while holding both these things? Like, it's okay for me to have focus and mission in my life while still allowing for certain elements of messiness or certain elements of interruptions that I just want to, that are just human connection that are actually deeply part of who we are. Because you don't want to get so efficient or shrewd that you actually like dehumanize the whole process too. That's not what I'm saying. You have to really be spirit, like, it's a cop-out answer, but like the spirit has to tell you, this is a moment to hold hard on your no. And this is a moment to like throw everything out the window and say yes to this person. And so you just got to ask every moment.
Right. You know, that's good, Jeff. As you're talking about Jesus, how many times in scripture did it say, as Jesus is on his way?
Exactly.
Ran into the rich young ruler, ran into
so it's like you need to be on your way somewhere and also pay attention when you're on your way somewhere.
Yes. Don't sit. Don't stop. Keep moving. But the other thing I'd say to that, if I may, is I've been a block scheduler for a while.
Yes,
to help.
highly agree. Yeah.
Except the problem is it doesn't feel really good when I go, okay, Lisa, we're going to get together and it's going to be in 4 months. And
yes.
So I've had to build God space. I actually will have a block on my schedule that's kind of space for the Holy Spirit. You know, how he moves.
That's what I was going to say. When you said block schedules, I do the same. As I put, ours says like nothing time. So it's like, that's another really good signal on whether you're too busy or not. If you can't put a block in your schedule, that's basically just kind of like, think about time, how you think about money, right? If you spent every last dollar and you never saved, you never had an emergency fund, you never had the freedom to just like help someone when they need it, you would go broke. Any emergency and you would just like go under, right? And same with a lot of us operate with time like that, right? But it's like, no, you tithe, you give 10% to this, you have a savings account, you go in the surplus. And like, I think time's the same way. It's like, keep some of that time to be used for anything, to talk to the Lord, go for a walk, your neighbor, your friend.
This is a big question and it's timely because so many of us are working from home. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, my college age son is downstairs being quiet. I told him to be quiet, but when you got younger kids like you do, you can't have that. So how, even though we are constantly giving our children our time, how do you handle your children asking for even more time, one-on-one time when you're working?
Oh,
I know.
No good answer there. That's tough. We have a rule in our family where, of course, I have to work and I'm getting a lot of stuff done, but I try to always say yes when they ask me to play or have something to do, or they want me to play with them, or have a rain check that's within the realm of like them still remembering. Because if you say, rain check 4 months from now, but that's hard. And so one thing that we do is, we try to schedule. We try to beat it to the punch though. So I try to schedule enough where hopefully it's enough. Or another thing I would say is integrate them into work too. Now sometimes that's hard if it's a lot of human interaction, a lot of Zoom calls. But if it's like something with your hands or whatever, just like let them be with you. I think this is really hard to flesh out on the ground, but I think there isn't nearly enough of family work integration. I think that's how all of human history has worked, except for maybe like 1850 and after, when we like once factories opened and people basically start leaving the home. And so I think there's a level of all of us need to integrate home and work a little bit more. Now, what does that mean? How does that look like? You still got responsibilities, priorities. Like it's really tough. But I think what I would say is try to pursue an ideal week. And what do I mean by that? I think the week is something really special that God gave us as a tool for not just peak efficiency, but for peak like human formation, right? Because if you try to just reach a peak day, that it's too quick, it's too small, you burn out. And if you try to reach a peak year or make an ideal year, it's just too big and grand and it doesn't land. The 7-day rhythm, I think, is God's vision for us to live ideal weeks over and over and over again with work and Sabbath and rest. And so what I would say is use that as experiments. And we do that as a family. We literally try to live our best 7 days. And then on Sunday, me and Alyssa have what we call the business meeting. And basically every Sunday we sit down and we look back and we say what worked, what didn't work. And we have a spreadsheet that I literally put up on the TV that's basically our calendar and what we did. And I'll be like, oh, that block was too long. That was too much. I want to, and then we go through our, what we call non-negotiables. So there's a column that says like, we have to have a date night. We have to have time with the kids, blah, blah, blah. And we plug those in, right? And if it was too long or too short, we adjust. And so what's fascinating is that it's like compound interest, right? Like, you know, if you put a penny in every day, you don't feel wealthy. But if you put a penny in every day for a decade, you start to become wealthy. And I think the week is like that too, of keep trying to iterate, experiment, and reach your ideal week. And specifically with needs like interacting with kids and integrating them and all that stuff. And it tends to just keep leveling up a little bit more each time.
So this is an important question because you're an 8. Your wife is a peacekeeping 9. I live with a 9 as well.
Yes.
And this will apply for spouses. It'll also apply for managers that are working with you. It could apply with roommates and friends. How do you assure, and we've got my question and then one other left. So that's our time frame here in the next 10 minutes or so. How do you ensure that Alyssa's voice is getting through and it's just not her just going, I'm going to keep the peace and not say anything?
That is tough. I mean, I think not
that I've ever dealt with this. Not that it's never been an issue for me.
Right. And the Enneagram is so fun too, because it's just a helpful tool. It's not like the best millionth thing in the world, but it's super helpful to us. And the 8 and 9 is hilarious because this is where we're exact opposites on, meaning like, I am just such a, like, if you have a need, say your need. Like a need should never be unspoken and you will pursue whatever you need and you will do it. And the 9 is the exact opposite. Someone has to draw the need out of them and, you know, and so that took us like years. And I feel like we're just barely getting some ground there. But what I would say is, keep asking really good questions. That's what I would say is the more I ask really good questions, the more it starts to come out. But if you're only satisfied with one question and one answer, you know what I mean? So like, so keep seeing the heart and the mind and the person as like something to peel back, not just like I did a question and I got an answer and we're done. And that tends to take us to a lot better place. And so I think that's true of work, employees, whoever, of like, of leaning into that, right? Of how do you cultivate that? And I think just ask really good questions, care about the person, and try to kind of use whatever they're saying as like things you got to swim past to get farther.
That's good. And this is our last question. It gets back to where we started, and it's tactical and it's good. What recommendations do you have on how to stop, be silent, and really listen?
That's a good question. I think just practice, like see it as a practice, right? Even like you said that. So I think you have to, because a lot of us see it as something that'll magically happen, not something that's like working out. And I think silent solitude is just like working out. Like you don't go into the gym after not having worked out for 5 years and try to bench press 150 pounds, right? So that the easy example there is like start with 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and work your way up and just use the time, right? Journal is really helpful. So like, I tend to spend probably 30, 40 minutes in the morning journaling, thinking, praying, reading. I kind of just do a combination of all of those. I don't time those exactly. But that's really helpful for me. And then one thing I'll say is don't do it anywhere where there's electronics. I know it's a weird thing, but there's actually been studies that have shown this, that your heart rate goes up and you are more anxious, even if your phone is off, but next to you, meaning like if it's within view, it changes your literal chemical balances in your brain and stuff. That's an insane research, right? Insane. That just the presence of your phone makes you feel different. So I would say get that away, turn it off, put it in a closet or a cabinet and go somewhere else. Get outside. Go. One thing for me that was really helpful when I started doing this is go for walks. Like I think a lot of times we just sit and we just kind of huddle like a monk. When it's like, man, just go for a walk. Just walk and talk with God and ask yourself really good questions. One book I would highly recommend is The Gift of Being Yourself by David Banner. Tiny book. You can read it in a day. It doesn't specifically, there's stuff in there on silence and solitude. It's more about identity and all that. But that book, I think, gives language and the framework of how that space and time can be set up. And so that's what I would say. Over there. Nope. Not a good answer. You still there?
No, that was a great answer.
You just wanted to leave some silence and solitude, didn't you?
I was busy taking notes, buddy.
No, you just wanted to leave some silence and solitude in the stream.
Always looking for that teachable moment.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you very much for being with us. Anything that that the Spirit has said to you as you've been talking that you want to share before we're done, or we really appreciate the time.
No, this was a treat. I really, really appreciated it. And thank you all guys for tuning in. Lisa, Ron, Keone, Merrick, all you guys. It was a real treat. And I love chatting. And thank you for the questions and having me on. This was really fun.
Well, Jeff, you've been a partner for a while, and I'm very thankful. And I'm thankful there's folks in the kingdom like you that are not shying away from their faith and the integration of that faith into parenting and work, into creativity, into the internet, into YouTube, into all aspects of life. That's what we're about in C3. And I love that you're doing this. So thanks for what you're doing, and God bless you.
Hey, thanks for having me. This was fun.
All right. Well, I've got a few announcements at the end, but I'll say goodbye to Jeff for now and thank him for the time. And thanks everybody for being with us. We have learned over time that it's important for you to take a minute to think about what your takeaway is from today. So if you got a piece of paper there, or you can even put it in the chat box, what is your takeaway today? What was the value for you in being a part of this time? And I know Jeff just talked about silence and solitude. So we're going to take a silent moment here on the internet to think. What is the takeaway? Feel free to put it in the chat box if you feel comfortable with that, but make sure you write it down. Research is showing that if you write it down, you're actually more likely to have it happen. We did a little non-scientific poll to find out what did business leaders want to hear from in this Lunch and Learn. And at this point, we're going to do one more of these. And we're doing one more because we feel like it's time to get back to work. And we're excited about getting back to work. And there's a lot of work to be done. C3 is primarily about the C3 forum, about men and women meeting together peer-to-peer to talk about business, to talk about the integration of their faith and their work. That's what we do. These webinars is not our central business. This was simply something we did in the emergency, if you will. So we're going to get back to what we do well as everybody else. But we do have one more Lunch and Learn, and it comes from a survey from you all. I asked, what did you want to hear from? And you said you wanted to hear from people doing similar work as C3 around the country. So next Monday, we will have a panel of three leaders to talk to us about what they're seeing among business leaders in their networks. We will have James Anderson from the New Canaan Society. He's president of New Canaan Society with us. We will have Ray Carter. He's the founder of the Chicago Fellowship with us. And then we will have Renee. I just met Renee today, and she's the new executive director of the Nashville Institute of Faith and Work. And they're going to be with us next week in a panel. And I'm excited about having them. They're three great leaders. I also want to make sure that you know that prayer is available for you. If you need prayer, we are ready and available. And you can find us at c3leaders.com/prayer. And prayer is available anytime. You post it on there, we'll get after it. We've got people ready to pray. The other thing is we have coaching available. If you need help transitioning between jobs, maybe you need some help with career pathing, you need some help with creativity. We work with over 300 business leaders in Western Washington and in Washington State, really, and they're all ready and available to help. And so we are about connecting resources, and we want to connect you to people that can help you out. So if you need coaching help, c3leaders@c3leaders.com would be the email address. And by the way, we just launched a new emergency assistance program. We're saying C3 is greater than C19, and the COVID-19 Emergency Leaders Assistance Program is available. So if you need help in any way because of COVID-19, we are ready and available to help. You can find those resources at c3leaders.com/COVID-19. It's been great to have you with us. We're very thankful. Remember to join us next week, Monday at noon, for a panel discussion from business integration leaders around the U.S. We will bring the learning. You bring the lunch. That's a C3 Lunch and Learn. Thanks for being with us, you guys. God bless you.